want the top. All my people right there in the back of the spot, I need the top.
Hi everyone, Sean here for the WorldCupNow.com, and I am bringing you Game Week 4's Fantasy Premier League tips from my perspective. And it's we're back. I mean, come on, that was, 1 week off, and it felt like a month? It was crazy. So, I always like to lead by example. And this week, I am leading by example in terms of what not to do. Basically, at the end of Game Week 3, I made 2 transfers and then another transfer. So I made 3 in total, and 2 were free, and then I had the 1, so it was only going to be a 4-point hit. And then the rest of the international friendlies happened. And I got into some injury problem already. So then I had another 2 transfers that I made. So then I was up to 5, and I was taking a negative 12 hit. Fast forward a week, basically to today, and I found out that Sturridge is going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks. And it was just like, wow. So it just goes to show that, even your best laid plans, sometimes injuries can force your hand. And what happened this week is I've been forced by injuries and from my own exuberance to use my wild card. And I know a lot of managers have used their wild card, and it is a good strategy to do that at the beginning of the international break, or any any break that you're going to have where you can take advantage of the price increases. I haven't been able to do that because I only used my wild card today. So I've been able to structure my team so that I get a price increase. So there's going to be 2 that'll go through tonight. But again, it doesn't amount to very much. So again, it's kind of an example of what not to do. And sometimes, when you put yourself out there to be an example, sometimes you are the example of what not to do. You got to eat a little humble pie. Excuse me, as I am doing, as I am choking. I should get some water, but it's all part of the game, really. You make decisions based on that you think are going to be good at that time, and then things change that you don't have control over, and then you just have to accept them and move on and adjust accordingly. So that's what I've done, and we'll go through. So, excuse me, this is really annoying. I should get some water or something. Let me just get a drink, 1 sec. Sorry about that. I'll edit that out anyways. So, now, for this week's tip, really, we're still kind of in the feeling out stage for formations, players, chemistry between players, and really who's going to be moving forward and into the points. Sigurdsson had a good 3 weeks. He's had some increases and a lot of increase in managers taking him on the team. So it'll be interesting to see if he can continue that into the rest of this first half of the season. And then you have a lot of transfers coming in. Flacao, Balotelli, these players that come in, injuries to Sturridge, Jones on United, Costa, all these kind of factors, really, they just kind of throw everything up in the air, and then the next 3 weeks moving forward are kind of when you find out where the chips fall. And that's where you got to really pay attention. This is the part of the season where you got to watch all the games, or as many as you can, or at least the highlights. And I say that because with new players coming in, new formations, and new kind of new teammates, and players that you're going to give and go from, and you're going to get crosses in from, that's going to change the dynamic of who's getting the points. And really, as a fantasy manager, what you want to do is you really want to be on the forefront of seeing who gels quickly with one another. I mean, if Rooney and Falcao end up linking up really well, or Di Maria and Rooney, or whoever it may be on whatever team, if you're fortunate enough to kind of pick up on that through watching the highlights and kind of scouting, if you will, the games, then that's where you're going to pay off in terms of points and player value rising. And that's where you're going to pay off with that. So that's where that effort will come into kind of the fruit later on down the road. And so the next 3 weeks that's where you want to pay attention to. You want to listen to the names or read the names. You want to see which ones come up, occurringly, and you want to adjust your team according to that, because that's what's going to happen. This next 3 weeks is going to start the trend going into the first half of the season. You'll have that first half of the season, and then the weather kind of gets cold, and then you find that, and I found in the time that I've been a fantasy manager, that you get the first half of the season, you get certain players that play well, and then you get the second back half of the season where you get another shift in terms of the team. Players that play well in the colder weather. It's a little change in the dynamic. So these next 3 weeks in terms of fantasy is going to influence the next half of the season. So that's where you want to pay attention. You want to scout your players well, and you want to adjust your team accordingly. Now, don't get too devoted to certain teams. I would say right now, the only advantage that you're going to have is based on fixtures. Reason being, and why I say that, is because if you do have a new player or new players, which a lot of teams do, there's going to be a lot of adjustment, and it's going to be an adjustment period. You're not just going to have practices and closed door friendlies that are going to really result in on-time performance. Those are good to get practice in, but it's not going to really result when you're going full 100% out against another team. So really, when you have a favorable fixture list in terms of playing teams that we as managers expect to be kind of lower on the table, it'll make that adjustment period a little bit better and a little bit more easier. So I think that's why you want to pay attention to Liverpool, Stoke, and United in the next 3 weeks, because those three teams have favorable fixtures. So look for Di Maria, Falcao, Van Persie, Rooney, all the big guns on United. All eyes are going to be on them. We can put that aside. That's that. Then you have Liverpool, so you're going to have Sturridge who's out, so you're going to have eyes on Sterling that are still there, Gerrard, Balotelli, and even defensively too, you may want to look at Lovren. I've brought Balotelli and Lovren into my team because of that, simply because of those fixtures, and that kind of what I'm terming, the favorable fixture list that you'll be able to, players will be able to adjust well to. And then secondly, more on the defensive side of that, or lastly I should say, on the defensive side, you're going to have Stoke. So look at someone like Shawcross. He's been kind of a fantasy asset. Earlier on when I started a couple of years ago, actually I can remember maybe about 3 years ago, he was a really highly valued fantasy asset. And you're starting to see that trend in this past 3 weeks. So it's going to be something that I, in particular, because I've had that experience where, you think, well, Shawcross, well, who's he, right? For some of you new guys, that's where the experience comes in. He didn't have a sensational season last year per se, but, seasons past, he has been able to garner a lot of points for fantasy managers. So it's going to be something, where you see, is that name making a resurgence again? Is Shawcross going to be another fantasy asset that you want to have, one of these kind of sleeper ones, because, you wouldn't think. But if you had that experience, as I do and other fantasy managers that have been doing it for a while, you kind of see these names that they pop up and then they disappear, and then they kind of come up, and, you got to, it brings it back up onto the radar. So that's something that I have on my radar that I'll be watching moving forward. So hopefully you guys are excited as I am to have your Saturday tradition come back, and whether it's going to the pub with your mates. For me, it's a little early to start drinking, and so I have my bacon and eggs in the morning, and I watch it in the lounge, and trash talk my buddies on IM, and hopefully that tradition is something that you guys can, or your tradition, I say. You can have some fun with that, have fun with your friends, and we're back. So we're back, game week 4. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have not subscribed, please do so below. Also check out the Twitter, the Google Plus, and the Facebook page. And I think I've come to a decision where I'm finding that a lot of the interaction that I've seen is happening off the site. So I think for the foreseeable future, the site is going to be closed for now. I may open up another one again, but as of right now, I'm just finding that with my requirements, time-wise with work, and getting you guys tips and something that's quality, and then you guys can kind of pull something from. I'm finding that I'll stick with the post in the description and in the video to complement that, which has always been kind of the format. But it's just not going to be hosted on the site. It'll be here on YouTube. So again, thank you very much for your watching this video, and again, best of luck, and I'll see you next game week. Take care.